Brian. How's it going?
It's been busy.
Yeah.
Getting everything ready, getting school finished up, and then getting on break, and then
It's a lot going on this time of year.
a lot going on this time of year, and it's been. But now, today starts break, so now we get to. So I'm hoping to
Yeah,
get
and
some.
I can tell there's a sense of relief when you say that.
Kind of a huge sense of relief. In fact, yesterday when I left the office, I consciously hold the door closed and saying work is staying there for the next 10 days,
Okay.
and that we're going to go concentrate on some things at home. And
Can you tell me about that?
well, that's working out of state, and so and it's been so the time's been limited that I get to spend at home with my wife to sometimes just overnight, and then there's so many things that we got to get. Well, you're trying to put a week's worth of relationship into a weekend or an overnight thing, and so now it will be kind of it'll be nice to spend. It's going to be nice to have a few days before Christmas to kind of let the storm calm, and then hopefully we'll be able to enjoy Christmas Day this year, because it's going to be especially different this year. And
okay, how so?
Well, that's we actually will likely spend Christmas Day by ourselves.
Oh, okay.
For a change, which has not happened in 30 years. So now our one son lives in Provo, and they're not going to be able to make it up. Our daughter and her fiance are going to be there Christmas Eve, but then on Sunday or on Christmas Day, they're leaving to go to Denver so she can meet his family.
Oh, okay.
And so then Christmas Day, and then our youngest son actually is in the MTC in Provo, and going, and so that'll be
Gotcha.
so it'll be really different, and so we're not sure how we're going to handle that now, but it's but it'll be a different Christmas.
So for you, this is going to be a change of events for you during Christmas time, but because of the stress of the job, you're maybe feeling like the letdown and some relaxation could be a good thing.
And I think for both me and my wife,
that
she's had a stressful year, and mine with a new job has been stressful. So we're honestly thinking that this might not be a bad thing.
Okay.
So
gotcha.
we're doing it. But
I can sense some relief there, or some let up there.
There's relief in that respect, and there is some let up. Yet at the same time, there are probably a few things that we need to process, and a few things that we need to iron out. But
okay, I could tell your body language kind of changed there. Can you talk to me more about that statement?
Well, it is kind of funny because I know we've talked in the past about how my wife and I aren't the same denomination. She's LDS and I'm Catholic, and now with our youngest son deciding to go on a mission and going, then that's changed that dynamic a little bit.
Yeah.
And that really it's put a well, up until now it's kind of been kind of a non-subject, or that we kind of, it is what it is.
Okay.
And so we kind of keep some of those things separate. Neither of our older two kids were very close to either denomination.
Oh, okay.
And that since they moved away from home, have kind of they've kind of, I don't know, fallen away, but they don't embrace the LDS Church anymore,
Okay.
and which creates stress and anxiety for my wife.
Okay.
It's stressful for me because I think it's important for them to have some kind of a spirituality, some kind of a faith, and well, like my oldest son talks about. Well, I'm spiritual. I just don't see. I just don't see religion. He said, and I told him once. I said, yeah, I understand that, but that's also that's kind of a cop out.
Okay.
You know, it says you want to have the one, but you don't want to do the work. And that's, and he said, and if you are religious, then there is a certain amount of work that's involved with that certain things that you got to do. But probably for me, the biggest issue is coming to grips with my youngest son and his going on a mission, because it really is completely contrary to my belief structure and the way that I see trying to live my faith, or trying to do some of those things there in the visits that we have, that we talk about, where he talks about preaching the gospel and preaching that, and how they take snippets here and there, and then they'll preach them.
Yeah.
And I struggle with that because of the not that not that he's not genuine about it, because he really is, but I struggle from the standpoint, do they really understand what that's about?
So I feel like you're telling me that you want religion to be a part of your children's lives because you find it to be important and spiritual practice, but at the same time, maybe the way they choose to experience religion isn't necessarily how you would want that for them.
Well, how they would want, but so if they don't choose to be LDS, my wife will be really upset.
Oh, okay.
So if they don't, and so it's not so much either choosing to be LDS or choosing to be Catholic. It's that if they don't choose that, she's going to be really upset, and she's going to be she internalizes it, and it says so that it is it's a black mark against her.
Okay.
You know, and that's one of the things that I struggle to come to grips with, or come to, is how do I help her feel okay about that? Okay. And yet at the same time, and also have my kids would like to see them have a deeper faith life. Okay.
So it's more finding a balance between not upsetting your wife, but also making sure that your children are finding the spiritual path that's best for them.
Finding the spiritual path that's best for them, and the angst that it creates in me, knowing that I'm not completely comfortable with the path that my youngest son is going to. Okay. That in that I know that missionaries usually, when they go, they come back more ensconced, as you know, in that, and I've even experienced that just a little bit in the time that we had with him, in between when he was through his trial period, and we got about 3 days with him, and then before we took him to the training center, and so there were days I really had to bite my tongue.
Yeah, I can sense the tension there.
Understanding the dynamic, and understanding there was so much I wanted to say, but I bit my lip because, one, I didn't want to. Anytime that topic comes up, it really stresses my wife, and she gets real defensive about it, and so it's really hard to have a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, to have and without her feeling like I'm accusing or putting them down.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like this is something you'd really like to have some dialogue about, but to kind of keep the peace with your wife, it's not.
And I think dialogue's a great word because I want to dialogue about it, but I want to be able to express how I feel, and have her understand how I feel, rather than having her. Rather than have her feel like I'm attacking her.
Okay. So you're not wanting to attack, but you're also not feeling heard.
Right. Yeah. And well, not feeling and not feeling like I'm getting to express how I feel, or if I express how I feel, it's taken as an attack. Okay. Yet on the other, and so I feel. So I feel a little one-sided that because I do when she expresses how she feels, I try to accept that and say, well, okay, that's how you feel.
Yeah.
You know, and I understand that, and part of that is, well, and a whole part of that is kind of coming to an understanding is that we are not going to look at things the same way. That we're and in fact, I had a discussion with my brother about that the other day. That because he's very anti-LDS. I mean, so much so to he's very vocal about it. Okay. And I finally told my brother, I said, I want you to unfriend my wife on Facebook.
Oh. Okay.
And he says, well, why? I said, because every time you post something on there about the LDS Church, I get the brunt of it. And I said, so if you want to come up and you want to take on, then that I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And so my wife was upset because she unfriended me, and I kept saying, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so, but the discussion I had with him the other day was more about that. I said, you know, he says, well, I post these things and because they're right. And then I asked my LDS friends to tell me, you know, and they tell me they're wrong, but I know they're right. I said, so I said, don't you? I said, when you talk to them, don't you kind of have to define your terms? Don't you? Because in a lot of ways, you're not talking about the same things.
Yeah.
You may be saying the same words, but the interpretations and the definitions are different.
Yeah.
So it stands to reason that when you're talking about things about the LDS faith, that you're looking through them through your lens.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at it the way you see it. But when they're responding to you, they're looking at it the way they see it. But it's not like you're passing the same set of glasses back and forth. Yeah, you each have your own. And he said, so you're never going to come to agreement. You're never going to see eye to eye because you're not looking at it the same. And that's
got to be frustrating then if you are two important people in your life aren't trying to have kind of the perspective and outlook of seeing things through other people's perspectives that you're holding.
Right. Okay. It is, and so and part of that is getting both of them to understand because my brother kind of doesn't get along with my wife, and my wife doesn't get along with my brother, and so it creates that dynamic.
And again, your body language kind of changed there, like you drew back a little. So is something in the past, or can you tell me more about that relationship?
And it goes. And a lot of it we talked about my dad's 80th birthday party, and about how we had talked about the blow up in the family because of that. And a big part of that blow up was, and so even though my sister-in-law was trying to ramrod the whole party. Well, there was that underlying current of the whole religion issue and some things like that, and so part of the blow up was the anger and frustration coming out about that, as much as things that were happening about the birthday, and so
yeah, it seems like a lot of the family tension is kind of centered around different views of religion, and then you're kind of trying to work as the mediator for everybody in a sense.
Well, or I don't know as the mediator, but I'm in the middle.
Okay.
And so I get it from both sides. That so I get my brothers chirping on me about this, and then my wife chirps on me about this, and I can't make either side look at it from each other's viewpoint.
That's a difficult place to be in.
So it puts me in a precarious position, and it does, and it is kind of interesting because I'll have a lot of people that will ask me about why did you know, so what would you recommend to people about a mixed marriage or that when you do it, and they're really surprised when I tell them don't do it.
Yeah.
I said really don't, and I said but you and your wife have done it, and I said yeah, but it's come at a price.
Yeah.
And it's come at a because we both had to make pretty big sacrifices. And it makes marriage a lot tougher when you do it, and so it's so we said, well, what would you recommend? I said, well, you know, I can't recommend one or another. I said I won't recommend that one of you convert to the other religion or because that's about the only thing I really can say is don't do it. You know, because that it throws. It throws a whole nother set of challenges into the dynamic that are tough enough. And I said, and if you are both religious people, then you also believe that that marriage is a triangle, and that you have the husband, the wife, and that God is involved in that triangle.
Yeah.
And so in a mixed marriage, it's very difficult to keep that third part as part of it because, you know, at least for us, it's in a lot of ways we're not talking about the same God. You know, that we really are talking about two different people, two different concepts.
Yeah, there's a lot of heaviness for you with that, isn't there?
Well, there is a lot of heaviness, and it probably doesn't help the fact that I get a lot of windshield time, you know, and you know, because I'm putting on about anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 miles a month, and maybe part of it is I got a subscription to satellite radio, and I play the Catholic channel a lot and EWTN a lot, and I listen to a lot of. So in some ways, maybe that's not a. So for me, I get a lot of processing time and a lot with that, and so so sometimes there's a lot of things that I would like to talk about or that I would, but I know it's not going to happen. Just because of I haven't been able to figure out how to approach that or without other people getting defensive, you know, and to talk about it. So it is. So it's been so kind of going back to, you know, with my son on the mission, then it's put it in the forefront for me, thinking about that and thinking about how best to support him. And
it seems like this is something that throughout your marriage, you know, the discussion between religion and different views has come up again, but it's maybe brought to light a little more so with your son deciding to do the mission recently. Yeah,
well, and over the years, it's basically been something that we could kind of ignore.
Oh, okay.
You know, but now it is. You know, now there's. It's kind of coming to the forefront again because my son's on a mission. My daughter's getting married in March, and so then there's who's going to do the wedding and how is it, you know, where's that and that. Also, my oldest son is, we're going to be grandparents. They're pregnant. They're not married, and they're not, and so you don't get away from it, and you don't, because it's all, we would like to see them get married, just for the baby's sake, and to have, and that, and they're in a committed relationship, so we're not worried about that. But at the same time, we subscribe to that philosophy that there's a union, it's a coming together, and that marriage is actually it's a bonding thing. Yeah. And so if you're living together and you're not going to be married, there's not that full commitment to each other, and you're actually going through and saying the vows, and it is that it's the joining together of two people.
And so you're telling me you and your wife, on the principle level of that and the way you've raised your children, you've agreed on a lot of things.
There's, our philosophies and our beliefs are relatively similar, but our doctrines are a lot different.
Yeah. And that's hard.
So, and it is hard because, when you have those discussions, you're talking apples and oranges a lot. And one of the things you kind of have to figure out is that we almost have to get to the point where we can switch classes. Every now and then, here, I need you to look through these classes.
Yeah. And for you, I think it's important, from what you're saying, to process things and to have dialogue, but maybe not as equally easy for your wife to do.
Right. And really, it's not. It's not easy for her to do because of self-concept issues. Okay. I blame her religion, and I blame her faith for that, is because they're very image oriented.
Okay.
That it's very important to them that you have the little model family, and that we all, and we never have it. Okay. And we don't, and so I know that weighs really heavy on her.
Yeah.
And so she's very concerned that people look at her different than others do, or that they kind of put her down because of the way she believes, or because she's not the.
Describe that to me.
Well, and it's like, we have a term we call them Molly Mormons.
Oh, okay.
And so, she's not a Molly Mormon, and even though she growls whenever we say, we use that term, but it really is that they're, and so. I try to work really hard to make her feel better about not, being the stereotypical, or that we are, and so that it's really more about her relationship and how, with it, and as opposed to how the others see her. But it weighs, really heavy on her. And so that's why these things with like the kids having a baby and not being married, and our daughter not getting married, and in the church, and that.
So even though you don't share her same religious views, you can understand why inside her religion these things become difficult for her.
Yeah, I fully understand, and I guess I'm a little resentful that that her religion puts that kind of pressure on her.
Oh, okay.
That and it is that as Catholics, we understand that that man is sinful by nature, and even though there are fundamental Catholics out there that are like, oh, shame, yet at the same time, there is more of a culture now with our present Pope that says you don't love the sin, but you got to love the sinner.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is more. You've got to embrace the people, and kind of let them know you love them, let them know you care about them, and then rather than rather than pushing them,
yeah.
you want to lead them.
Yeah, that sounds really similar to what you're doing with your son, who's going on the mission.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Just that ideology that reminds me of what you said about your son.
Sure. Yeah, and that's and so I do, and you know I do for him, and I try to more by example,
mm-hmm.
you know, and I try to give him little snippets of wisdom or share little faith things with him. Although that creates because I then see things I share with him
mm-hmm.
come up in his discourse and his discussions. It's like,
okay.
It's like, that's Catholic. You shouldn't use that. Or, you know, that it came from. So it's kind of like, and so it's like, no, I don't want my faith to make more people Mormon.
Okay.
Or say, you know, because yeah, a couple other things that I shared with him is that it was actually a quote from, it's attributed to St. Francis, although St. Francis never said it.
Mm-hmm.
But those exact words, but it is preach the gospel every day, and if you have to, use words. Mm-hmm. You know, and so the example was to lead by example, mm-hmm. or preach the gospel by the way you live your life.
Yeah.
And so I noticed then he started using that in some of his things. It's like, okay, but you know that came from St. Francis, and you guys really don't, you know. It's like, so and that, I guess that's the thing, is that you know, the LDS Church really espouses the apostasy, mm-hmm. and that's what I struggle with the most, is that they say, you know, sometime after the death of the last apostle, then the church turned away. Yeah. But when you think about people like Augustine, St. Francis, and some of these doctors of the church, that all came after the great apostasy, and so it was like, no, you guys say that's, you know, but now you're using it. Yeah. And so we run into those things, and I have and I struggle with that.
Yeah, because it seems like there's a balance of you wanting to implement some of those things, you know, and kind of live by in his life, but you don't want them to be used in a way you're not comfortable with.
Not comfortable with, but, or yet at the same time, is that I really have a different viewpoint of their belief system and why they believe, and really the fundamental foundation of and so I struggle with, when do I confront? When do I say, you know, really say, if you go to the core mm-hmm. of the foundation and how your religion was founded, it comes to this question. Yeah. And either it's yes, or either it's no. Mm-hmm. And so either I'm right or you're right.
Oh, okay.
And so and of course, and that's where it is, but I can't have that conversation. I can't express that because.
And that makes you sad.
It makes me very sad that it is that, and because ultimately the desire would be to try to lead them back, and help them to experience the richness and fullness of faith that I've experienced.
Okay, and so what I'm hearing there is that's just such a hard struggle, because at what point do you feel like it's worth causing some issues with your wife to be able to reach your children on that level?
Right, and is it worth, I don't know, for lack of a better word, causing the apocalypse?
Yeah.
You know, that it really would. I mean, there would have to be this huge, and so, and it would be like the apocalypse, but and having a tough time seeing through to the other side, and say, okay, if I do this, if we, then what happens when we come out of it? And
so you're trying to think of how that would look long term.
Right, right. And it is, and because, because the self-image is so driven, and that is that how is that going to, how's it going to impact my wife's relationship with her family, with then, and so that's the continuous struggle that I have.
Yeah, I see that. Wow, I think today you really delved into a lot of stuff that I think, for the most part, the stuff that's reoccurred in your life,
sure,
especially during your marriage and having kids, but it's stuff that at some level you haven't been able to express or have the conversation with your wife because maybe from past experience you've just seen how volatile it can become, and so this is something for you that you really are processing on your own and not having as much dialogue about that you'd like to be.
Good. Yep. And that hits it on the head because it is. Yeah, it's something I feel like I'm kind of out in the world by myself.
And it's so present in your life right now.
It seems to be. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I'm glad you shared all that with me, and this was a great session. So I hope we can pick it up, in a week or two.
We'll do it.
All right. Thanks,
okay.
Ryan.
Thank you.